Tuesdays here at 8:20 on the show, as we are pleased to be joined this morning by VolQuest's Austin Price. Good morning, Austin. How are you?
Much better info than you get on Friday.
Fighting words. I love it. Out of the gates quickly today. This is what I expect of you, Austin, when the glass breaks. This is what I expect of you. Let's begin, Austin, with the timeline for Joey Aguilar. Is there any update on when he can get to campus, and how involved will you expect him to be here in the near future in some of these player-led workouts and getting to work with his new teammates?
Well, I think once he gets here, it will be, very much accelerated. He's been looking at the playbook and trying to familiarize himself with it. Coach Halsey's been on the road recruiting, so I don't think they've spent a ton of time on Zooms or anything to this point. But if everything works out, Joey told me last night that they're trying to get all his stuff finalized with Appalachian State for graduation. If he's able to get all that done and get everything sent over, he could be here next week. So, that's the hope. Again, best laid plans sometimes, but the hope is he could be on campus as early as next week.
Awesome. With that being said, do they have the ability to, and does the NCAA allow Zoom meetings to be happening as far as breaking down the playbook as much as he can learn before he can get on campus?
Absolutely. That's the thing is even if he hadn't been able to get here till June, because let's say he wasn't taking the online classes at Appalachian State to get his degree and graduate. That's the thing that's kind of getting him here earlier than June because of UCLA's quarter system. He could have still been on Zoom, even if he was in town, even if he just said, all right, I'm going to finish out everything online through June, I'm going to go ahead and go to Knoxville. He couldn't have went to team workouts, but he could have absolutely set one office over and done Zoom with Coach Halsey. He could have been in the building. You just couldn't have done team activities. So, he will hit the ground running as soon as he gets here. But, yes, absolutely. Right now, he can do as many Zooms with whoever that he wants to do.
Austin Price of VolQuest's our guest. So, Austin, when he does get to town, and he wants to work with the number one receivers. And then I imagine Jake Merklinger wants to have a player-led workout with, top receivers. And then George McIntyre competition. Like, how does that division of practice work, Austin? And how involved can coaches be in facilitating, hey, you work with these guys, you work with this, and let's put together a practice plan during the spring and summer months?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I'll say this. He doesn't have a lot of receivers to be able to be rolling three deep with anything. So, I think if you're working with the ones or twos, you're working with the top guys on the team. It's going to be interesting to kind of see how this works. I mean, you're going to have an open competition, so you're going to have guys jockeying to try to, hey, let's go throw. Well, I've already committed to go throw with this quarterback. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to kind of watch how this happens because, again, Merklinger's been here the longest. But even George has been here for a handful of months more than Joey Aguilar to this point. But Joey Aguilar has all of the experience overall, so over the other two. So going to walk in the door and be a little bit behind, just the knowledge of the offense, but be way ahead in terms of playing experience at this level.
So, Austin, one of those receivers that will also not be in that room, Cal transfer Jonathan Brady commits to Indiana over the weekend. What ultimately do you think made the difference for Indiana over Tennessee, who had a visit with him?
Yeah, I think for Tennessee, they've been searching for someone to be their fourth/fifth wide receiver, and that's hard because a lot of these kids that are in the portal, they want to be starters. And so Tennessee's been very transparent with the kids, like, we'd love to have you. We think you can add a lot to our room, but, as far as starting, there's definitely no guarantee there. And right now you'd be behind the eight ball with the guys like, Mike Matthews and Chris Brazel and Braylon Staley. So that part of it is, a dynamic that most people don't think about. The other dynamic is like if you're watching the film, if you're watching the tape, and you think the guys that you have right now are better than the player that you're looking at, spending a bunch of money in NIL doesn't make a ton of sense. Now, where Tennessee kind of got themselves sideways, I think, is the fact they did not take anybody in December. I think that's where this thing got off the rails a little bit. The players in this spring window aren't nearly as talented as some of the receivers that were out there back in December.
Austin Price of VolQuest's and On 3 joining us today. We speak a lot, Austin, about the wide receivers, man, but is the offensive group that could have a lot of production this year? Is it the tight end group to you too, man? Because besides Miles Kissman being the senior guy there's a lot of talent, man. And not to even mention what Jack Van Dorselaer can also contribute to, whether it be blocking or in the pass game too.
Well, you better get to work on those names. I
said it well yesterday, Austin.
You did. Can confirm.
Yeah, I said it well yesterday.
Saying them Tuesday and Friday with me and saying them with Mike Keith on Saturday is totally different.
I'll get there. I'll get there.
Now, I think that there's talent there, right? Now, some of it's still young talent, but Van Dorselaer is someone who had a great spring. Kitzelman's going to be back. He's ahead of pace. He's ahead of the schedule. And that's great news for Tennessee's offense because they need him to one, be very present, be a leader. I mean, that offensive side of the ball, to me, he's the guy that sets the tone. Yeah. I mean, if you go back to, spring practice, he was as vocal as anybody, during practice, and especially during the open team period or the open individual periods that we were out there. I mean, he was like a second or third tight end coach. So to me, you need to get him back. Ethan Davis has got to continue to progress. And then some of those young guys, Deshaun Brame, Jack Van Dorselaer, what does Cole Harrison look like as a redshirt freshman? I do think, for all those quarterbacks, right, the tight end can be such a safety net. And I think this group can be that for whoever the quarterback is.
For sure. And speaking of the quarterback, you brought up something with Will there I thought was very fascinating, considering the position that all three of these guys in with Merklinger, McIntyre, and Aguilar. We're talking about Aguilar like he's a new kid on school, or whether it's a boy or the girl, and everybody of the opposite sex is trying to figure out who they are. I was like, man, have you seen the new girl? Have you seen the new guy? But what I say that to say this, that we're intrigued by him. But knowing George McIntyre and Jake Merklinger, do you see those guys in any particular fashion just conceding, saying, you know what, yeah, go do your thing, and especially considering, with Merklinger getting a new deal as of recent?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anybody conceding it, and that goes for either guy. I think the accelerators hit for George a little bit more than it was 6 weeks ago. I think 6 weeks ago he knew, I might get in as the third quarterback in 1 or 2 games this year, but, I can just kind of, ease my way in, and now it's like, let's at least get into the shallow end of the pool. We ain't got to jump into the deep end, but let's at least get into the shallow end, feel how the water is. So I think that, George is super competitive. And then Merklinger, again, 6 weeks ago he thought, I'm going to be the backup, so I'll get into a handful of games, get some tape out there, and then all of a sudden it morphs. I mean, the day of the spring game, and how many people were tweeting QB1, 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 QB1. And I don't agree with that because you just are assuming he's the guy, right? Where in reality, it was always going to be a competition, and Jake Merklinger is going to have to go out there and win it. And that would be the case even if, they had not been able to find Joey Aguilar and they just went to a lower level and got a quarterback for depth purposes, and it was GMAC and Jake battling it out. So, I think for both those guys, they're a little more focused than they were 6 weeks ago. In some ways, a lot more focused than they were 6 weeks ago. And, they both got a real shot to try to win this thing. And that includes George McIntyre, who, again, people go discount because he's the true freshman, but I don't think you can discount anybody. I think it just boils down to how each person plays in August.
Austin Price, our good friend of VolQuest, joined us this morning on RK-Dub. You got to love these way too early mock drafts, right? And we did this with James Pierce last year. But obviously, Jermod McCoy is on some of these lists. Pro Football Focus has him as a first-round pick, I think 8th overall right now. But in all seriousness, with Jermod McCoy, now you got me in my head, coming off of that ACL, how prepared is he? And do you feel like he can even take another step in that secondary this year?
I think a lot of it depends on how quickly he can get back, Kayla. Jermod is someone who is driven. He's really, really talented. But now that you've added Colton Hood, maybe he doesn't have to feel the pressure to be ready week one. Maybe it's more like, let's just get back and be ready the quickest we can, for the biggest game, right? So it's week 3, Georgia. I think it does to me like the added depth with Colton Hood is a big addition, whether it means he's playing some corner, playing some nickel, whatever. I think he gives you versatility. He allows other guys to focus on maybe other spots or become, not as dependent on other areas. And, for Jamad, I think that's a nice luxury to have because the last thing you want to do is rush back too soon coming off of this ACL injury. And a kid had, very successful surgery, but at the same time, you still want to prepare and rehab and go at your own pace. He may, heal up quicker than normal and be full go by the first game, and you're not blinking an eye. But he may also, heal a little bit slower, and it may take him a few extra weeks. So I think for Jamad, it's about being healthy and playing your best football and not rushing back too quick and playing, careless football. So I think the addition of Colton Hood allows that. But Jamad is a super talented kid that, deserves everything he got a year ago.
Austin, did you hear of anything specifically when it came to him transferring, why this was maybe a better fit?
In terms of why he left Corvallis, I think.
No, for Hood, sorry.
Oh, for Hood. I think for him, it's fairly close to home. He started his career at Auburn, went to, and redshirted, went to Colorado, played a ton of snaps, played really good football opposite Travis Hunter. So you're going to get all the balls thrown your way because nobody wants to throw at the Heisman Trophy winner. And the kid held up really, really well. He's a fairly tall corner. He's probably about the same size as Jermon McCoy or thereabouts. And, I think for him it was location, what Tennessee had to offer, and, just the ability to be back in the SEC and kind of work Tennessee and what Tennessee needed.
VolQuest's Austin Price joining us this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Austin, switching gears to the hardwood, Amaro Morgan comes in as the Rod Clark replacement on Rick Barnes' staff. What about him was appealing to Tennessee, and what about this job do you think led him to 1 month after taking a job at FSU decide, no, I'm going to keep those boxes packed and then just take them on to Knoxville?
It's kind of like William Inge. He went to Alabama for 5 minutes and then came to Tennessee.
Right.
I think for Amaro Morgan, it's a chance to coach with Rick Barnes, to get the rub of a Hall of Fame coach. Tennessee's roster's going to be pretty good next year. As for Tennessee, their interest, he's young. He can relate well to players. He's done a fantastic job at each step along the way. And I think someone that, obviously Rick Barnes had paid attention to, and he'd caught Rick Barnes' eye. And, when Rod Clark, he dabbled with Michigan a year ago, and then he dabbled again with Indiana. And then when that became real, it was just really easy just to pick up the phone and go, hey, I know you just got to Tallahassee, but, I've got a spot open. And Amaro Morgan obviously said, yep, I'll see you there.
Austin, what kind of impact can Clarence Masamba have for this team? And Amari Abram maybe slotted into that starting position. But with one scholarship open still on this roster, how comfortable are you with how Tennessee is reloaded for next season? And do you see them being aggressive in filling that spot or keeping it open for weeks to come here?
I think they've done a nice job. Masamba is an athletic kid that can shoot it. I like Abram. The kid's bounced around a lot, but he's been consistent as far as his ability to shoot the ball. He made nearly 73s last year. At Louisiana Tech, kid has been productive each step along the way. And if Tennessee needed somebody that's got some experience that can shoot the basketball, they've got some experience put around Native Mint now, whether it be Abram or Jacoby Gillespie. Masamba's got the international experience. And as far as that one spot, I think they'll be very patient with that. Obviously, everybody's going to talk about, what happens with the 5-year thing. What does that mean for Gainey or any of the others? And, Rick Barnes has been pretty open about the fact that, he could see with the House case, likely passing coming up here in a month and a half or so, the scholarship numbers could go from 13 to 15. Well, all of a sudden, you're going to have 3 potentially instead of 1. And so everybody can start connecting the dots there. I don't know if all that happens to the point where Zakai's back, Mashak's back, Gainey's back. But obviously, Tennessee's going to be very patient, and that's something everybody is monitoring, including people on campus. So we'll see what happens with the 5-year deal. I do think that, I'm a firm believer that it's going to pass at some point, probably in July, maybe it gets to August. When that happens, I'm also a firm believer that as much as they want to say that it's going forward, that's not going to fly. So I don't know why they would even do that. Like, I think you just say, look, if you've got an extra year and you haven't played professionally, then obviously you would be eligible to return to school. That includes people that played 5 years ago if they want to. Now, I mean, our school's going to take somebody that's like 28 years old? Probably not, that hasn't been doing anything but working at the whatever.
The radio station.
So, I mean,
I'll come back, Austin. I'm 27. I'm still within my 5 years.
But I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, the NCAA hasn't won those type cases when it comes to the, it's only have to have common sense. Like, you can't go, well, it's just going forward. Well, what do you mean it's just going forward? Like,
Right.
if you only played 4 years and you have a fifth, then you should be able to use it if somebody's willing to take you on their team and has the scholarship open. So, I think that's why all this stuff continues to kind of hang around. We'll see what happens with it. Again, do the players even want that, right? I mean, if, Zakai had a magical end to his career in a lot of ways. I know it didn't end with the championship or anything, but, I mean, a fantastic senior year. Meshack made that huge three against Alabama to win the game. And so, like, to me, Gainey's always been the one that made the most sense because he was only here for 2 years, getting an extra year when Tennessee needs somebody that can shoot it from the outside. And as much as he grew from year one to year two, like, if he continues to grow, as far as his game, then I think that Tennessee could really benefit from having, him on this roster. So again, we'll see how it all happens. But that's kind of where all this chatter, remains and hangs in the balance.
Austin, since Ole Miss, the Baseballs and Tony Vitello have lost their last 3 SEC series, including 2 ejections. Is it time to panic for the baseball team up in Knoxville now?
Panic? No. But, I mean, they better win the series this weekend and be competitive in Fayetteville next weekend. I don't believe you can just, flip it on its head and flip the script and everything be fine, 2 weeks from now. Like, you better figure things out these next 2 series. And I don't think you have to win both. I think you definitely got to win this weekend. It's at home against Vanderbilt. I think you better be super competitive at Arkansas, which means you can't get swept, and you have to be in every game. I think that matters. Obviously, Arkansas is coming off the series win over Texas, which knocked Texas out of being the number 1 team in the country. This team, at the end of the day, Ramon, you know how this works. It's sports. If you can't score, you can't win. And right now they're struggling to score runs. In game 2, a game they won, when it was 4-4, when the second game resumed on Sunday, they had 13 hits and only had four runs. I mean, like, they're making mental errors on the base paths. Some of that's on the kids, some of that's on, Coach Elander, waving them home when, didn't need to. And, they're making, poor decisions at the plate. The umpires obviously didn't give them a great favorable strike zone this past weekend. And then, the pitching staff has not been what they had hoped. But, again, this is a team that still has a ton of talent. If they can get it flipped, they can be right there. 2 years ago, they had to go on the road to Clemson for the regional. They were able to win that, go to Hattiesburg, win the Super Regional against Southern Miss to go to Omaha. You can get it done. The difference is 2 years ago, Tennessee started slow in SEC play and then kind of, heated up. This year, they started fast and then have kind of fallen off. And that's the problem is, you're not trending up. Right now you're trending down, and can you just level off here over the next couple of weeks?
He is Austin Price of VolQuest's and On 3, joining us this morning at Austin Priceless, where you follow him on Twitter. Thank you, sir. Good to talk to you, Austin. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Austin.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Austin Price. I promise you, nobody wants me to come back for any eligibility.
Absolutely.
I don't
Still
even
in
know
that
if I
window?
want that. I think I'm trying to think. When did I graduate? I guess my window just closed.
Just
It was
closed.
6
Okay.
years ago. I graduated college in 2019.
It was
so
19.
My clock would have just ended. I could go back as a
Wild.
golfer. I'm closer to being a
There you
competitive
go.
golfer now than a
Look at you,
runner, and
yeah.
I've broken 100 twice.
I doubt it.
So that
Caleb.
tells you how bad of a runner I am at this
lying.
point in my life. 615-737-1045. Speaking of football recruiting, there was a 5-star prospect from Nashville who committed to an SEC school yesterday, and we'll talk about